And then I feel her fingers on my balls, and I'm not even looking. I'm half asleep. But I turn around, it's not the girl. It is the biggest crew guy we got is playing with my balls. This guy. And my wood starts going down, and I haven't even shot yet. And I go, I'm going down. And this guy goes, I'll take care of it. He runs over to the craft service table. He comes back, his finger is red. Sticks it up my ass, Tabasco sauce. And I stayed hard for another 2 hours.
Today is season 1, episode 3, Porno Gil.
Porno Gil.
Yes.
A classic, I think.
It's pretty great. Yeah. It's pretty great.
You know what struck me from the very beginning of it? This is a very simple structure of this episode.
Right.
It's a classic structure. Maybe I'm just coming from the point of view of where we are now, in season 12 and how complicated. But it's just eloquent in its simplicity.
Look at you saying eloquent. For those listening who don't understand eloquent, that's with a level of class and simplicity. And I obviously know you know that, but I liked saying that.
Well, all right. So we start off with golf.
Yes.
And I think, golf we know is a major theme through all the seasons. And I think this is the first real, real golf?
By the way, if I may, people think I play golf. I play 9-hole, but people think I'm a regular golfer based on seeing me on
because of the
curve.
show.
Yeah.
Larry is a big golfer. He loves to play golf.
Golfer.
Yeah, he loves to play golf.
And by the way, how much time on the set does he, an air swing? He does an air swing
all the time.
But he has for years, and his air swing has changed. That's the thing that's hilarious.
Well, he's grown.
No, I don't know, but he's trying new things all the time. So, yeah.
Because he's an artist.
Yeah, he's a golf artist.
So we start out with the guy. Now, here's the funny thing.
Wait, but before you go there to the scene, what was unusual about this episode is the Curb theme comes on, and while it's still playing, we're establishing where Larry's at, where there's a whole bunch of action going on, and that's unusual for the show. Well, not unusual at that time. Well, the
show, this is the first season. The things that are just finding themselves.
By the way, the next episode, it didn't do that. Just saying.
Yeah, and also, you know what else I noticed about the Curb theme in this episode? There were times when it was slowed down.
During the episode.
Yeah, that was weird to me.
To my knowledge. So.
Yeah, that was weird to me. So it starts out, Larry's at the driving range.
Right.
And he's hitting balls, and a guy comes up with a hat with a bolo string.
Yes.
And which Larry objects to. You could see that he's disgusted with the bolo string, which he ended up wearing many seasons later.
I know, but nonetheless, he didn't know that. Yeah. By the way, watching now, I didn't understand the first scene, the setup, where the ball drops and Larry chooses not to pick it up until he went back home and explained it to Cheryl.
That's
when I'm like, oh, okay, so that's not which, by the way, the show is filled with subtleties, but I think this is one of the only times where I really did not quite get it. And then once he told Cheryl, I was like, oh, we could have filmed that differently.
he didn't pick up the ball. Yeah. I
So.
had the same response. I had the exact same response. But I do think that it's the first time we see a theme that's throughout all the seasons, which is golf etiquette. That's a big theme of
You're
his.
saying that, and I didn't even notice that while we were filming it at all.
Yeah.
I don't notice anything. I just go there and do my crap. And I'm focused on each scene when I'm a producer, and when I'm in a scene, I focus on that scene. I never think about, there's a lot of golf-themed stuff here. And it's amazing you caught that. I never did.
Yeah.
Hold on.
That's the beauty. We notice different things.
Okay, I'm glad you replied, because I thought all I was going to get is, But you paused, and then you justified.
Like, for example, one of the things I noticed in the next scene, when he's home talking about this to Cheryl, is his shirt. It's a shirt he never would wear now. It's red. It has a zipper. It's something he never would wear a red. I've never seen him in a red shirt since season 1.
Yeah. Again, something
like
you
red,
noticed.
not a burgundy. Red.
Susie. I don't understand. All right. Okay. But my favorite thing that he says in that scene with Susie was that he recoiled in horror. Based on a guy with a strap. He said this was Cheryl. Based on a guy who had a strap under his goofy hat, you know?
And that is why he did not pick up the ball. Because golf etiquette would dictate that he should have picked up the ball.
Yes, without a doubt. But I didn't quite understand.
Yeah.
All right. So let's move on from golf.
Then he talks about you're having bypass surgery.
Yes. And comes to visit me in the hospital. Which at this point... Am I wrong? Did you want to say something else in between there?
Well, no. The other thing that I found interesting was that and then Gil calls.
Right.
Before he comes to
Gil calls, yes.
Gil calls. He's trying to call John DeBellis, which is hilarious that John DeBellis is an old comic from the old days.
I know John DeBellis. I actually...
but he always throws in these names of, people that nobody else knows but us. But I love it. I enjoy it.
John DeBellis
comedian.
He's still around, right? He's a great guy. I love that guy. I apologize to John for saying he's still around. Just I haven't talked to him or seen him in a long time. Isn't that amazing? And now, by the way, I didn't think he was dead. I was open to him being dead, which sounds strange.
Well, who knows?
No, he's not dead.
Not that I know of.
Yeah.
I think I would have heard.
But you said it with such authority, so he's not dead. Anyhow...
So, and then he accidentally calls Gil. So this is like another example of he accidentally gets himself into this situation. And Gil says to Gil, "You could fax me directions." You could fax me directions. Yeah. It's like, it just doesn't feel like that long ago.
Well, he presents also Cheryl with the fact that they have to go. Cheryl's unhappy. He says, come on, we'll go there for 10 minutes and leave. So the minute he says, it'll be 10 minutes and we'll leave, you just know that's not what's going to happen. So
of course.
That goes with a theme of the show. Larry's intent, for the most part, is always being nice and being thoughtful and making things quick. But the world doesn't operate that way. They don't make things quick. As a matter of fact, I remember him coming to a birthday party of mine. I don't remember which one. I had a taco truck, and as many people do. I don't know if people do that. But anyhow, it's L.A. Mexican food rules. And at a certain point at the party, like maybe an hour in, Larry comes over and he goes, all right, I've done it. I've been here for you. I got to go. Bye. And he leaves. But the idea that he came over to me and goes, all right, knowing I'd understand, all right, I'm going to go. All right, take care. And I was totally cool with him going. And he didn't have to say, I got to be up early tomorrow. There was, the usual excuses.
No, it's not necessary.
No, he just literally says, all right, we did it. Bye-bye. And I was good with it. And I understood and I laughed. And a lot of people came up to me later, where's Larry? And I just say, you know what? I actually told everybody I asked him to leave. All right, let's go and move on.
Okay, then we come to you in the hospital. And I have to say, Jeff, you look like a baby. You got this,
I know, it's
like
weird.
A little baby face, young baby face Jeff lying in that bed in the hospital. Made me laugh.
Yeah, but it was very uncomfortable for me to film that scene. As someone, well, I used to have a thing called Wolff-Parkinson-White syndrome, which is I would have tachycardia randomly. And I was one of the first people who had this thing called an ablation. I was the 72nd person to have an ablation. Also around the same time, Mitch Hurwitz, created Arrested Development, and Michael Cera, who was on Arrested Development. I know Mitch and I were both in the first 100. He was earlier than me. Point being is millions and millions and millions of people have had this procedure, which is, they burn the extra pathway in your heart. Mm-hmm. It's invasive, but there's no cutting open of your chest. So I was in the hospital for that heart-wise. And then don't forget, right before we started filming, I had a stroke and laid in the hospital bed. So the idea that I'm laying in a bed and I'm going to have surgery to unblock it just was a little too close to home.
That was uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I didn't like it at all. I didn't like the way I felt, and I was happy when the scene was over. Really happy.
And the purpose of the scene, of course,
It's to set Larry up to get my private porn collection.
Get your porno.
Which, by the way, go ahead.
But I was just thinking about, the idea that you have a hidden porn collection, that he's creating this character of the typical smarmy agent.
Right.
You know what I mean? I mean, he's really separating you from himself in that he's the comedian and the artist and you're the smarmy agent.
Yeah, and by the way, what we also established is I asked him to do things, but we also knew even at that point in the show, I'm pouring water in case you hear it in the background. We knew that he would do anything for me and I would do anything for him. As a matter of fact, I would bulldoze the world for him. And that's probably the one noble side to my character, is that I would do anything for my pal. And at that time, more client than pal, but it was both. So the idea of it was for him to set up the ending to get the porn.
So now they get the directions by fax, which I'm just dating, just dates the whole show.
Right.
And there's no GPS, but he does have a nav system that he doesn't know how to work. Just the other day, you and I and Larry were doing a scene on set, and he was telling us that he doesn't know how to work anything. Remember he was telling us that? Oh, my
God, yes.
So here we are 22 years later, he still doesn't know how to work anything.
And by the way, he doesn't know how to work. He doesn't know how to do Amazon. I mean,
nothing.
I'm talking about the simplistic things where you just push a button and push a button.
Well, he talked about making reservations. He doesn't know how to make reservations at a restaurant.
He doesn't know how to order from Grubhub and DoorDash.
Exactly.
He has no idea.
So this was way back.
Hold on. His wife was in North Carolina ordering him dinner. And he kept calling her, "Whoa, it's not here yet." And she had to give him updates.
And he just told us that 3 days ago. And that's what I thought about when I watched this episode. Back then, nothing's changed. He didn't know how to use the nav, and they're lost.
But also what's fascinating is Cheryl says, "Don't you know how?" But he added the opportunity to have a navigation in his car. It didn't automatically come in the car. It was a thing to get every sort of accoutrement, which he would not know how to use any of them, which is funny.
And there was no GPS on the phone. There was none of that.
Yeah.
In 2000. I don't think. No, there was none of that. We had, the little flip phones.
Yeah.
So they're lost.
Yeah.
And they're driving along and, they have no idea where they are. They don't have a Thomas guide.
Right.
And they see an old lady in the street. And it's night.
Okay, yes.
Just a random old lady walking at night
who
down
was nothing short of perfect. And she was an actress who was in, I remember her from Goodbye Columbus, and she was Ali MacGraw's mother. She did so many movies in the 60s and 70s. Mm-hmm. Very popular character. I didn't recognize her when we worked with her. I only recognized her the first time I saw the show. And what was amazing, remember I told you the dry cleaner in the last episode was in Planet of the Apes? And this woman to be in Goodbye Columbus and bigger movies than Goodbye Columbus.
So she was a working actress, and she was terrific in this.
But also a dark working actress. And this was the jolliest I'd ever seen her.
Until Larry just pushes her over the edge, which he is wont to do, and she rips up the directions.
Yeah. And that, by the way, what I loved about that scene is that it wasn't forced. It really felt like Larry was trying to grab the directions from her, and it really felt natural that she got frustrated and just threw him up in the air and said, "Fuck you." The whole thing really worked. And that's a hard kind of scene to film. So it doesn't seem forced or comedic. And when I usually say comedic, it's trying to be funny, even though that's not what the word means. If it's funny-ish. Basically, people try to be comedic with things and fail. This was a big success that I was impressed with. And by the way,
I do find, though, generally on our show that for us, I never try to be funny.
Oh, I've never. Well, by the way, one of the keys to doing comedy is to play it dramatically. Is to just play it straight.
Just play
if
intent.
You put a spin on
whatever
something,
it is.
If you put a spin on something, it's generally not going to work out. Now, I'm talking about even play it straight. Even if you're a character like Pee Wee Herman or how Bill Murray is in movies. Whereas there's a specific style, but they're still playing it completely sincerely. And that is the way to play comedy. Whereas we see a lot of actors audition and they put a spin on something, there's not a prayer.
That's the kiss of death.
Kiss of death. Yep.
So, all right. So now the hat guy comes driving by, the same guy. This is a tradition of using a lot of great old character actors that we have done over the many, many years.
And I have a really good piece of trivia that is really good. At some point in that whole thing, he says, for the very first time, pretty.
I have it
good.
here.
When did he say that?
Yeah.
That's the first time in the show he's ever said it.
He says it right after the hat guy, the bolo string hat guy.
He tells Cheryl how things went. And he says it went.
So how'd it go?
Good. Pretty good. Pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was when he he stops the car and he sees the guy, and it's the hat guy who calls him, what kind of prick doesn't pick up a ball? And he walks away and he's not going to help him with the directions. And he's also going to Porno Gil's house for the party.
And by the way, the basic premise there, which if I was there, I might have been there and I missed it, but I would just say, why aren't we just turning the car around?
And following him.
Yes. Or just turning the correct car. Thing. But you know what? Moments later, they show up at the front door.
They show up.
So it doesn't matter.
And Porno Gil is Bob Odenkirk.
Yes, Bob Odenkirk, my pal.
Now, let's talk about him for a minute, because I know him very vaguely because he never lived in New York. I only know all the comedians who lived in New York.
He lived in New York.
I didn't know
Susie, he lived in New York when I did. He was writing on SNL then.
But he wasn't working in clubs.
And we both lived on 72nd Street. So we were
I lived on 73rd at the time.
Yes, you did.
But he wasn't working. He wasn't working in clubs because I would have known him.
No. He was not working in clubs. The last time he performed was in Chicago.
Okay,
we have
that's
been
why
friends.
I didn't know him.
We have been friends since our early 20s, whereas we really suffered together as pals in Chicago.
How old were you?
I'll guess 24, 25. And we're the same age. Yeah, almost exactly the same age.
Where is Bob from?
Chicago, Naperville.
He's from Chicago.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And of course, we all know him as, as Saul.
We had Better Call Saul. But on 72nd Street, we had regular places that we would go. I spent the weekends with him.
He was a writer on SNL at the time?
I spent Sundays were really the day. We'd sit in Central Park by the Dakota, John Lennon's apartment, in Strawberry Fields or that area there, the Circle. We'd have bagels, and we watch the old guys talk to one another and tourists and what have you.
And we're talking mid-'80s.
Yes.
Mid-'80s.
Yes, mid-'80s. And then we would go to BJ's Bagel A Go-Go. A lot of bagels for us. We also went to a place called Al Bon Gusto on 72nd Street. And the only
I remember that place.
Okay. So, it closed shortly thereafter. And the reason it closed was, and I love this. This is awesome. And it's happened. I've seen it a few other times. The guy, Al Bon Gusto, his children, he wanted them to take over the business. They said no. So he said, fuck it, I'm closing. Because he wanted his name to be...
Not every kid wants to take over the business,
that's fine, but I love... To me, that's not what's fascinating. What's fascinating him, not him going, all right, I'll sell it to someone else, but him going, fuck it, I'll close. And there was Dinkle's Bakery in Chicago recently happened. Children, no, boom, I'm closing it down. I love that. That is so.
And yet
that's
sometimes
integrity.
it works out. It's like Russ and Daughters. The kids took over.
Oh, well, that's fascinating. But it never works out when you sell it. Somebody's going to run your company into the ground. And by the way, I love that we got up there. That needs to be talked about. If you're planning to close your business, but you want your children to take over, you close it down if they say no. Don't you dare.
What did your father do? I don't know this.
My dad owned a puppet theater in Brooklyn.
No, seriously. What did your father do?
My dad did two things. He was in the plumbing supply business with my grandfather and my uncle.
So it was your grandfather's business that he went into?
Yes. How about that ironic?
Yeah.
Didn't even know.
Yeah.
And then we moved to Florida and he became a legal administrator, which is like a Jennifer's job on our show. Like the line producer, but the...
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he was doing that at a law firm, and I even worked, not for him, but for other law firms. I was a runner, which means they'd give me papers. I had to run to the courthouse, file them, and come back for more. So I was going back and forth. And that was really downtown Miami. That was great fun.
He wasn't a lawyer.
No, he had gone to law school, but based on me having ADD, his office was right below my bedroom, and the vent for heat was completely open. I would drop pencils on him all day, all night, whenever he was studying.
I'm sure he enjoyed that.
No, he did not. And he has ADD. He had ADD, just like his son. He gave it to me, whatever. But the point being is, I destroyed his dream of being a lawyer. He would have been a good lawyer.
All right, so. I never knew that. I never knew what he did.
By the way,
so,
I see that you're quick to cut me off and move on, and then you take a beat and go, let me be a little more thoughtful. That's happened twice.
I'm not quick to cut you off, Jeff.
No,
I'm
not
just
cutting me
moving
off,
along
but
the story.
I know. Okay, let's go.
So Larry and Cheryl show up at Porno Gil's, and he's asked to take his shoes off.
And just if you would take your shoes off and right there.
Okay.
Thanks.
Really?
Yeah, just take them off. It's just a custom my wife started in the house.
I think I'll leave mine on. Is that okay? They're completely clean.
Yeah, it's not about that.
Look, see? Come on.
Yeah, that's not the point. Just take them off.
Come on.
You know that's going to be a fucking thing.
Yes, but also that has to have happened to Larry.
Probably.
But
some people are very strict.
I would wager that's happened to Larry, except Larry would have taken his shoes off, but obsessed about it. And so he lives the fantasy on our show of not taking the shoes off. And
well,
of course,
that's what the whole show is, isn't it?
The purpose of our show, he, has to keep them on, but that was his dream. And let's see what happens.
It's revenge.
Yeah.
For all the things little petty things he has to do in real life that now on the show, it's his kingdom, his fiefdom. He doesn't have to. And it's a dinner party.
Yes.
And you see already Cheryl is just like...
Well, they thought it was a regular party.
Right, that they could just show up for 10 minutes and leave.
Yep.
But it's a sit-down, small dinner party. I love they're introducing people, and you see already the wife is crazy.
Wait. We're skipping over a whole part that I love, which is Bob, which is, first off, he tells them...
You guys looking around? It's a
Great house.
great place.
Yeah.
My wife jokingly refers to it as the house that cum built. Because of my porn. I did porn. I never made enough money to buy
I
it.
told her.
Then my favorite moment, which is true improvisers. True improvisers really are in the moment and they don't pass things off that are strange. Well, whoever owned the house...
Yeah.
Or a set designer who was really smart, but I think it's whoever owned
it looked more like it was owned the house.
Yeah, owned the house.
Yeah.
He looked on a shelf, and there were all these little bottles.
Come on in, though. I'll show you around later. There's some, that's a collection of just small bottles, and I like them.
It's interesting.
Yeah, they're not as big as normal. Come on in here.
That's all he said.
It's all he said. I know. And if it was later, I could say it was set designer. In that season, I would say it was there.
No, because it's too much of an accident for Bob to just notice it on that take. And I'm sure I know, I was there. He did something different every take about those bottles. But the simplest one generally is the one that wins.
So, and he was also a Second City guy. He's an improv guy.
He was in Second City, and we did improv together. We did one-man shows.
I love that he introduces, this is Peter, my trainer. It's so LA to have your trainer
by the
over
way, you
for
know
your
who that
dinner
gentleman
party.
was? That gentleman was Larry's trainer. Peter Steinfeld, who is the father of
Haley
Steinfeld. Yep.
Really?
That's his daughter. And I love her show on Disney, the Hawkeye show. It's one of my favorite things Disney has ever done. I love their TV shows. By the way, I know the amount of sidebars. Some of you enjoy them. Some of you don't. I'm going to be me.
But don't you think that's such an LA thing to invite your trainer to a dinner party?
Without a doubt.
It's such an LA thing.
I didn't recognize who was playing. I wonder if she was an extra.
Who was Porno Gil's wife?
Oh, that's Melanie Hoops, another improviser from Chicago.
Terrific.
Yo, she was great. Great. And then the other two people were Jackie Harris and Paul Greenberg, who worked a lot with Bob and I, improvising, doing comedy shows, stand-up. Paul used to have this great bit of him being this rock and roll drummer. It was hysterical. And by the way, I just came across them. I do a thing for Dana Gould. Dana Gould has a talk show parody called Hanging with Dr. Z, where he dresses and has full makeup of Dr. Zaius, who's one of the main characters. And again, I'm going to mention it, Planet of the Apes.
Planet of the Apes.
And so it's really funny. And Jackie and Paul are on it. And I just saw them. It was exciting to see them. And by the way, all these shows are on YouTube. They're hysterical. I love them.
I haven't seen that one, but I've heard from many people that it is hilarious.
It is. It's on YouTube. You don't have to pay a penny. So there you go.
So now they are stuck at the dinner party. And by the way, I was also struck, Cheryl, more so this is just, what is this, episode 3. So she had been in the first special and then the first 3 episodes. And Cheryl had not done a whole lot of television at this point.
No,
I don't know if she had done.
No, she was in the ground.
So poised.
She was in the Groundlings, and she'd done some TV work, but nothing.
Little bit,
guest
but not
star
that
stuff.
much.
Yeah,
she was so poised and so holding her own in this situation. I was just very impressed with her. She really was fully formed in a way and held her own with Larry in a way that I don't know anybody else could have. Now, Gil now goes into a whole long story about teabagging and women sucking his balls.
Hold on. He goes into a story that's clearly not scripted. And the idea of the story is first the teabagging with the woman licking his balls, but then a crew member is touching him and he doesn't realize it. And then before you know it, the crew member put Tabasco stuff on his finger and stuck it up Bob's butt. Now,
here's my question.
Yeah.
Was that in the outline?
No. Maybe
that was all Bob.
Maybe that Porno Gil tells a story. No, that was all Bob.
So the Tabasco up the ass is all Bob.
Yes. But by the way, Bob was in my second movie, Dealing with Idiots. And he was one of the... he was in every one of my movies. But this one, he played a parent in Little League Baseball, And we go to the shop, and it was the most fun I've ever had improvising. It was a fully improvised movie. I went in there, and he told a different story every time I walked in. So
Did that
we were filming
make it
this thing.
difficult to cut?
No, because I used one story or the other. Like, I committed to whatever story. He told about this one story and not talking to his brother down the street, who's a locksmith. And it was a whole story. It was perfection. It's one of the scenes in that movie where I just go, that scene could not be any better. But because of Bob.
Larry has said that like 96% of the time, the actors come up with something better than he ever could have written.
Yes, but the other 4, by the way.
The other 4%, I don't know if that's the percent, but something like that. He wishes he could have written it. So more times than not, and that's all in casting.
He'll call me as we're going home. And he says, that scene would be better written, and I'll tell you why. And then he tells me why. And it's different every time.
But rarely.
I'd say once a season. Maybe twice. Once
a season. So more times than not, he's happier with what the actors bring.
Yes. Or it's either he's really happy with what the actors bring, or their performance is cuttable. Like, we can use it, but they weren't that great. Well,
yeah. I'm glad you brought that up because it's improvised, so much of this show is put together in editing.
Well, by the way, I think really the whole show is put together in editing. Yeah. And Steve Rash has been there since the special. Steve Rash, one of our editors, he has been there. He has cut the hour pilot, and he's been on every episode in the history of Curb Your Enthusiasm. That's kind of remarkable. We should have him in. He's a joyful, interesting guy.
He's a great guy.
And he could probably tell us things about the show. That
And what he does is so important, and he's an unsung hero,
unequivocally. And as the seasons go on, he's had to look at more footage. Our shows have become more and more
complicated,
dense and complicated. So he has to look over, hours and hours of footage, so he's pretty amazing.
But he's not, I don't know if he ever edited porn. So he tells the whole story, the teabagging, the trainer takes the watch. Once the trainer takes the watch, that's going to come back to haunt him. And then the hat guy throws the lighter. LD breaks the lamp. The wife freaks out. She really freaked out on him.
And by the way, she played that lighter and then meaner and then meaner. But you can always go bigger. Going smaller is much harder. I think you just go smaller and they say more. Because that way, if you're big and they want to make it smaller, they'll probably use one of your big takes. If you go light and then go bigger, hey, you know what? I just made that up. That's not true. Let's move on.
Well, but you know what?
I'm trying to figure that out. And actually, I can't remember. I didn't make it up, but it is a thing. And if I'm not mistaken, well, she couldn't have gone bigger. We got her to a 10.
But being somebody, which we will see in the future, not yet, who tends to go big, I always try to vary. I always try to give a take that's softer and a take
by the way, you vary your performance from take to take, and he has you being normal. And by the way, the yelling is gold, so he has to save it. His yelling at me and getting pissed at me is gold, but he has to save it. He doesn't allow that sometimes.
I thought it was very funny that the Brian, the hat guy, owns a lamp shop. And that's where they got the broken lamp from. So,
by the way, that's Brian Palermo.
Okay.
I think he was a groundling guy. That was funny. And we use other ones like that coming up. Because there's a lot of Second City people. And because of Cheryl, a lot of groundlings people. And Brian was and is hysterical. So there you go.
And so then they leave.
Palermo.
It's a whole big Megillah, and then they leave. And then I love this next part about Cheryl's really angry at him. And
bye, Cheryl. Nice to meet
So what's the level of anger here? What am I dealing with?
Well, I'd say at least an 8.7.
8.7?
Mm-hmm.
That's not that bad.
No?
I thought it'd be like a 9. 8.7.
Yeah, no, it was. It was up higher. Yeah, and then you broke that lamp, and that crazy woman screamed at you. And it got you some pity points.
Pity points?
Yeah.
Fabulous.
Yeah.
I love pity points. Yeah. So how do I get to a 7? Any way to get to a 7?
I don't know.
I know I can't get to a 6. That's out of the question. But a 7, we could have a very decent ride home with a 7.
You think so?
Yes, I do. And I'll tell you what, if we ride home as a 7, as soon as we get home, you can go right back to an 8.
All right, it's a deal.
It's a deal?
Yeah, as long as I can go back.
Beautiful. Come on, we'll go home.
Okay.
You see the marriage, between them, that this is not the first time that this has happened. This is a long-suffering wife.
But by the way, you feel for Cheryl. But here's the thing also. He was happy that she was at an 8.7 and not a 9.
Not a 9.
I mean, what is the difference between 8.7 and 9?
3 points.
Yeah, 0.3.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I just like that whole interaction between them because you see what it's a marriage. It's what it is.
It's a marriage, but a very difficult marriage for one of the members of that marriage. And a very difficult life for one of those two people. So Larry is overwhelmed by what happens to him in life, and it brings on a great big bunch of anxiety and stress. Cheryl is dealing with what her husband does with adding to whatever regular life stuff.
Constantly.
Yeah. And I feel for her.
Interesting, when we were talking before you got here, that it seems as though Larry doesn't like Cheryl. I don't get that so much. I feel as though he loves Cheryl.
Well, the only hint we've had of something, if something existed like that, is the Mary Steenburgen Ted and Mary episode, which we just did.
Well, he also calls her Hitler in that first episode, too.
Well, by the way, excuse me for saying so. Yes, that is extreme, and the parent's Hitler. But I think that most men, and by the way, women too, your partner, you say he's a fucking... By the way, there's not a woman that I've been with that hasn't referred to me as a fucking idiot to my face and to others. And here's the problem. I am a fucking idiot. So how am I supposed to go against that? It's like, what am I supposed to do? Not that Cheryl's Hitler, that was extreme, but that Cheryl's bossy. But
his calling Cheryl Hitler in that episode was really a story point. That was so that your parents didn't have to come in. Exactly. And some things are just story points.
And by the way, that would never make an episode now. That would never.
That's true.
He would
That's
not want to do that. Yeah.
That's absolutely true. So, and then he has to go back, get the watch.
Now, you say that casually. He has to go back to get the watch. That is the equivalent of walking on hot coals, especially for a guy like Larry.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
to go back in and have to ask for his watch. And by the way, Gil, the porno guy, played by Bob, very kind to him. Wants him out of there. He gets a dirty look from the wife. And by the way, I would guess this has happened to him, either with a watch or something else, that this has happened to him. This feels like he's dealing with something.
But he gets a welcome from Bob, but Bob fucks him because he gives him the wrong directions.
Yeah, but he didn't do that on purpose.
He did.
Initially,
to me, he did it on purpose.
Wait, he gave Larry the wrong... Where did you pick that up?
He says to Gil says he wrote the directions down. Make a right at the barn. It was, to me, I felt like he purposely gave him the wrong directions.
That makes no sense. He's coming to his house for a party.
No, when he leaves, when he goes back in to get the watch. And then he says, can I have directions to get home? And Gil writes down directions.
Oh, I thought he went to his room to get a copy of it.
I took it as he purposely wrote down the wrong directions for Larry to get lost.
Maybe he did.
Well, maybe we interpreted it
by the
differently.
way, here's what I want to say, and this has always worked for me. You are right, Susie. And I say that with complete sincerity.
That's a married man. That's a man who's been married.
Yes, no, but I know it's like, do I have to be right? And I'm guessing with my recollection and the way I look at things, I don't know that. You know that.
It was an interpretation, so I could be wrong. Who knows? We would have to ask Larry. But they get lost.
I'm sure Larry, I would be shocked if, by the way, we're working tomorrow. Let's ask Larry. And
he's not going to remember.
I know, but I would like to see. He's going to try. He's going to try.
He goes back to get the watch.
Yeah.
He says to Gil, can you give me directions home? And Gil's like, oh, yeah. He writes them down. And then right at the barn, left at the barn. Was that a barn? They're completely lost. I felt like he did it on purpose. He purposely gave him bad directions.
All right, I want to say something else. And by the way, why are you explaining again? I just said you were right. There was no need to explain.
I might not be right. I don't know.
Well, you can be as humble as you want. I think you were right. But I think there are more things on the show that everyone can associate with, especially doddering men like myself, who has ADHD, bipolar, the whole festival. There isn't a time where I leave my house and I haven't left something I need inside the house. My record is 4 times. 4 times I've sat in the car to leave, and I have to go back in the house. 4 times, the pain.
What do you leave mostly? Your phone, your credit cards?
No, things I have to bring with. I know when I come here, my notebook with the notes from the episode, I've forgotten that before. Or where was a time where I had to go back to my car? Well, maybe it was the day we filmed the hour thing.
Yeah,
I had to go back to my car because I left the notebook in the car. The point I'm making is it constantly happens. And there have been so many times on our show where I've associated with something, that it's been an association. And I don't think it's unique to being a comedy guy.
Don't you think that is part of the allure of the show?
Oh, no, I definitely do.
Yeah.
But I'm saying I don't know how many people feel the same way.
I think that people watch the show and they completely relate to all Larry's fuck-ups. So then he goes to our house.
Yeah.
And you had given him the alarm code. Is it 8866? Is it 9988? He's turning it upside down.
8899, by the way.
8899. Right. Alarm codes, they're a fucking nightmare.
Yes.
He does the alarm. He goes to get the porn. Now this we really need to have Bob talk about. That clip of Gil in the bad wig.
Well, by the way, how about him doing the karate chop?
Hilarious.
He
It
makes
was
it
so
so
bad.
funny. But what he wants to talk about is the montage of him having to look like he's having sex with these women. And I believe during the montage they were topless. I don't know if they
were topless. They were topless.
And they might have been porn actresses, for all I know. I'm betting they were. I remember them being porn, because you don't hire a regular actress to pretend they're in a porn movie with their tops off.
Yeah.
You want somebody who's comfortable in that situation. And when we filmed it, I know that Bob was not was uncomfortable in that situation.
He was uncomfortable.
And by the way, I
would be if I were him.
I purposely didn't go to set because I didn't want to watch him have to go through that.
We're here with Bob Odenkirk, Porno Gil, one of the funniest episodes. What do you remember about that, Bob?
I remember I got a phone call saying, come up with 2 stories that are inappropriate as though you had been a porn star. Really fun to do. I sat down and wrote out 2 stories. And I just remember that it was the most fun shooting since Mr. Show. And in some ways more fun than Mr. Show, because I was the writer on Mr. Show and all the other things I had to do.
No responsibilities.
Yes, plus as well, we didn't improvise on Mr. Show a lot. We did some, but it's just the best way to do character comedy, I think, is to have it be at least semi-improvised. But,
at least.
Judd obviously improvises and writes a script, but then improvises a lot. But you guys go off even more of just an outline. And I think it's the best way to go. It's just you get the best.
It's the best way to go if you have the right people doing it.
Oh, yeah.
And you
that's
were amazing in this episode. You're amazing in everything, but you were amazing in this episode. The Tabasco story was just, where'd you pull that one out of your ass?
That's right. I forget what the other story was, but it was...
wasn't. Oh, no, the Tabasco story was that. I thought it was something like Fidadio, shitting on a table or something.
Yeah, I think it was. I think it was a shitting on the table thing.
Something
and who
like
doesn't
that.
love a shitting on the table story?
And who doesn't love making a shitach?
Well, let me just say, you go along in this business, you do all kinds of stuff, and you're thankful for every job, but then every once in a while, you do a job where you go, oh, that's why I got into this damn thing. You forgot. You went years without, getting in touch with that fun and excellence and kind of purity that made you want to do suffer all this shit in the first place. It's crazy.
I think that's also why one does stand up, because you have so much more control. In that way.
You guys like stand-up more than I do.
No,
That's
I
the other
don't.
thing.
I don't like it at all.
I'm the only one
He's the
here
only
who
one
likes
that likes
stand-up.
I'm done.
Well,
I ain't
my
doing
friend
it no
David
more,
Cross
baby.
loves it. I have so many friends who love stand-up.
I think that's why people love it, because they have control in a way that when you do other things, you don't.
You're at the mercy of whoever you're working with, whoever. So someone I know just called me and said I was offered a job on this show. And the only thing I asked her was, who is the showrunner? Who is the person in charge? Because that will set the tone for everything. Larry David is in charge on our show.
Right.
Therefore, the dominoes go boom, one after another. As a matter of fact, I'll sit on the curb set, Bob, and I'll think to myself, oh, this is what I do. And whenever Curb ends, it makes me sad for obvious reasons, but also I think Curb is right now the last bastion of any type of show that I moved to Hollywood for. I don't see other comedies that have this feeling for me.
But Bob is so eclectic. You go from Porno Gil to Mr. March. You know what I mean? That's really a range, honey.
Well, thank you. Yes, I know what you mean. Yeah, I've had a crazy range I've been given to do, and I value it greatly. It's really what I look for is, the show I just did called Lucky Hank, the reason I did it is because it's so different from Saul. And
what is that?
Tell
us what Lucky Hank
is.
It's
a show for AMC. It's based on a Richard Russo novel where I play a professor, and he's a crabby guy, and he's funny. He makes jokes all the time. It's about the tensions of academia, and it's about his family and his family tensions, which I think are relatable. Academia, less so, but maybe we can get people to understand the craziness of that little work situation where people get tenure, and then they don't have to worry about their job anymore.
Yeah, and then they don't care about their job anymore frequently.
Yeah, yes. Right. It's a weird thing. Richard Russo said you kill yourself to get tenure. I talked to the writer.
He's a great writer. I love him.
Yeah, and he goes, you kill yourself to get this thing, and then when you get it, something weird happens and your world kind of transforms, and not necessarily in a great way. You don't know how to judge your value every day. You're not going to be fired and you're not going to get a raise. And so every day becomes this fight about, let me speak first, or give me the honorary thing, or I got published in this magazine, you got published in a better magazine. There's the rest of us, our jobs and our journey through our careers is how we judge our value and what we fight for every day when we wake up. When you get tenure, you don't have to wake up.
You end up Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf is what happens.
Yeah, right. So anyway, the point is, though, I read the script and it was so vastly different from Saul. There's no guns in it. There's no drugs in it. Nobody's going to die. My wife loves me. I love her. My daughter loves me. I love her. It's just, Saul was such a loner and his world was so scary and all. But so the difference between Saul and Curb is so wide.
Yeah.
But if I had to stick to one thing, my dream would be a show like Curb.
Yeah. Well, that's why, and I'm speaking for you now, Jeff. I think we feel so incredibly lucky that we're on season 12 now. It's like amazing. So I want to talk about your reenactment of the porno films.
Yeah.
When you're in the wig.
Yes. Let's talk about that reenactment. We shot it at a motel.
Of course.
Up the highway, like up the 2, I think, maybe up the 5. Middle of fucking nowhere, sun-baked motel laid out flat. It had a pretty amazing sign, if I remember. It was all faded, of course, but it was. What is the name of that? It's where they shoot all the porns in north of Hollywood, north of LA,
west of the 5,
right, and. Actually, that's where Vince had set Breaking Bad, but it went to Albuquerque because of tax reasons.
By the way, you might have enjoyed it more if it was closer.
Yeah, being away from my family was very hard on us. But look, the 2 actresses with me, I don't think had any training.
I'm sorry for laughing.
I don't think they had any training, and I don't think they had SAG cards, and I don't think they ever worked again.
Did you feel any awkwardness?
Oh my God, yes.
You did, yeah.
Yes.
I would totally feel awkward in
Susie,
that situation.
I've done everything. I've gotten naked in Radio City for Comic Relief 8, totally naked. This was the most embarrassing, unpleasant shoot of my life.
Really?
Yeah, because we had nudie underwear on,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm such a juvenile.
You basically have to. What is the difference between having sex? I know what sex is, but the difference after a few minutes is not that much.
It's a long time ago.
Yeah, it's really unpleasant. No, I remember thinking fake sex when it's done this graphically is pretty, well, why don't we just have sex?
Yeah.
Let's take this off.
Don't you think that happens sometimes with people doing sex
well,
scenes in movies?
There are a couple of them. Don't Look Now with Julie Christie and Donald Sutherland.
Yeah.
It's been rumored that they had sex, and I forgot the other one. No, Tattoo with Bruce Dern and Maud Evans, I believe, is her name.
Adams.
That was Maud Adams, that they supposedly had real sex. And these are rumors that I heard from when I was a little
Well,
kid.
you could see how that would happen. Like
I do.
Why not?
I see.
Just do it. What the fuck?
Can I be honest? I get turned on walking in my house with nude underwear on. I really do. And everyone around me just reacts. They're disinterested. They roll their eyes or they don't even notice. But I'm turned on.
So Bob, that's interesting though that it was so awkward.
It was
for
gross.
You. Yeah,
it was awkward for me,
hilarious,
and I found it.
Though, weren't you so happy with the outcome when you saw how funny it was?
Yeah, I loved it. I loved that we were doing it. And as awkward as it was, I knew it would be a great capper to the episode at the end there. But telling the dinner party story was the most fun. And I think pretty quickly Larry chose that story over the other one that I'd written.
Well, I would see him choosing the Tabasco over shitting.
Yeah. Yeah.
He doesn't like scatological stuff.
And the reason why that was so much more
not
fun
at all.
is
he's offended by it, to be honest.
the reason that was so much more fun, I think, is because you're there acting with all these other great, with Larry and Cheryl and the terrific woman who played your wife. Her name escapes me.
Hoops. I know her from Chicago. My brain is dead.
That's more fun than
Melanie Hoops. Was that her name?
Reenacting a porn film with two hookers.
Hey.
Yes. And who else was in that scene with me?
Paul. It was Paul and Paul was there, perfect, and his wife.
And his wife. They're actors. They're Second City people, and they're great
also
comic actors
and improvisers and all that.
And Larry came up with the line, "The house that Cum built." I think I don't know who came up with it. I didn't. It's a great line.
Yeah.
I didn't write it.
The house that Cum built. That is a great line.
And I don't, that doesn't sound like something I would come up with, but I may have.
But you may have. Yeah. I did not. And I thought it was a great line. And
Bob, I've mentioned to you my favorite moment in that episode, because every episode there's a little thing that just tickles me and I can watch over and over and over again. Do you know what I'm going to mention?
No.
The little bottles of alcohol.
Oh yeah.
Which were in the house.
Yes.
When we got there, it wasn't like something our set designer put in. And
of course you would love that. And I do too.
That just destroyed me. And you pointed them out and you said, "This is my collection." You made it so simple. This is my collection of small bottles.
I love it too, Jeff.
I know it killed me, man.
I love it more than The House That Cum Built, which I think is a very funny line.
Very funny.
But it's just so dumb.
Yes.
And yes, those little bottles were there as a decoration by the homeowner.
Susie, there were hundreds upon hundreds of them.
But that's the joy of working this way, is that you turn and you see the little bottles and then they become a part of your,
but most people who are not good improvisers and not paying attention. So if you're improvising, you have 360 degrees around you to notice. And so Bob, God bless him and his talents, saw the bottles. Well, they're not going to be ignored, because inside Bob is looking and going, "What the fuck is that?" All right, well, this is my little bottle collection. And that's what I'm describing is milliseconds in his brain. But it was a thing of beauty to me.
Yeah, because it's if you're in somebody's house and they're talking about all the shit around them and they point to something completely inconsequential that you don't need an explanation for anyways, and they don't, it's just such great dry. That's what you can do in an improv scene with good actors around you, is the dry, tense kind of
throwaway.
the throwaway thing
But
that
the
is very
absurdist
real.
yeah.
Also, by the way, not something you would write. Why would you ever, writing a script, write,
Put that in.
those are my
it's
little
true.
bottles.
It's true.
And
And,
then
there's
make them
so much
build-
gold that comes out of stuff in the moment.
Brevity and being succinct are so often the keys to making that shit funny.
Yeah, leaving something hanging that is just, a stupid incidental but very specific truth about the moment is just a great thing to
Well, by the
trip
way,
over, drop down.
the greatest thing.
But when you write, but here's the thing. Think about that thing of when you write, you wouldn't write that for so many reasons.
It wouldn't
And
even
it's a
come into your
shame.
head.
Right.
Hey, I love you, pal. I will talk to you soon.
Thank you. Great to see you.
Take care, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Now, I can't react on the air because he's recording it after we've recorded this, but he wanted to be a part of things. That was the specific thing he wanted to talk about on our show.
We're comedians. We're not, the
Right.
regular actors who do sex scenes all the time. Ugh.
No. Well, by the way, even for
we're
regular
comedians.
actors, no one gets off on a sex scene unless they're a
No.
weirdo.
And what people need to understand is that there's cameras all over and there's makeup people and there's, it's not, there's no intimacy.
Right.
Well, now they have intimacy coaches and intimacy,
Which, by
all,
the way,
all these.
that is a really, even though it sounds absurd, it's a
No,
good
I
thing.
think you need it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's a great addition because
me too.
I think most people are thrown by it. So
Okay, and then here we are at the end. Larry's watching the porn,
yes, okay. So we're at the end, and the mother catches him.
and Larry's
watching.
watching the porn, and Louie and Mina walk in. Louie's face is
By
just
the way,
so
that's
precious.
what I wanted to end the show on. I love when Larry goes, "Yeah, I know that guy," or whatever he says. But
Yeah.
Louie's face.
Louie's face is classic.
He didn't say a word. He just made a face of disappointment, which put a smile on my face.
Yeah,
God,
Louie's face
how
was a
honored
thing of beauty.
am I to have worked with him?
And it's a great place to end. It's the end of our podcast, and it's the end of the episode.
But by the way, I do think that episode, and I know we're going in order and we've done it, I think that episode is excellent. And also the simplicity of it and how really every beat worked. There are some beats, which I'm not afraid to point out that I didn't love. Maybe there was one early when I said that wouldn't work or that didn't work. But that every beat in that show was fantastic.
Also, at this point, they're standalones. Later on, we got into
By the
arcs
way, all the episodes are standalones.
in season 1.
Yes.
Yeah,
And I've got one of those comes up later in like season 5 or 6, and I'll point it out.
In later seasons that have arcs, we frequently have 1 or 2 standalones within the arc. But we're going to get to that
Yeah. we'll
next time.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, everyone who listened. The idea that you'd spend time with us is an honor.
Thrilling.
Yeah.
Bye.